Everybody, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Noelle Delaco, entrepreneurship professor and EIR this semester. I am here with our Iona grad, 2004, Juan Diaz, and I'm going to start off by asking Juan some very easy questions, like, where are you from?
Good morning, everyone. How are you? So I grew up in Hunts Point in the South Bronx, but I was born in El Salvador in Central America. Came here when I was 5, and then I wanted to be president of the United States, so at 11 or 12 I decided to become citizen, just later to find out that because I wasn't born here, I couldn't be president.
You couldn't be president. All right, so what was next? Talk to us a little bit about like your childhood. Where did you go to school, high school? Walk us through those years.
Well, I was lucky enough. I'm a product of Catholic schools, and I say lucky because growing up in the South Bronx, it's a rough neighborhood, rough public schools. So it was just Catholic school. Grew up in the South Bronx. We weren't allowed. My brothers and I were not allowed to go outside. Oftentimes, outside was a trouble. People selling drugs, shootouts. So we were always inside, playing video games, reading comic books. I still read comic books, guys. I am still that geek. But yeah, that was my thing. That was my jam. And my mom has worked for years as a cleaner. She then made that into a business, and she was working for a lot of affluent folks. She then met a couple of Hollywood stars that connected her with other Hollywood stars, and then that kind of opened up my world to say, wait a minute, there's possibilities out there for me.
Right.
This is not just it. So that kind of opened up the field for me for other things that I wanted to do. So
when you were in high school, and let us know what high school you attended, did you have an idea of what career field you wanted to go into?
Sure. I went to Cardinal Hayes High School. At the time, no, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew that, I wanted to do something in business. I just wasn't sure what that was. I definitely knew I wanted to make money.
Right. As we all do. And Iona, how did you become familiar with the college at that time? What made you decide to be a student here?
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult deciding what school to choose because obviously you're told throughout your life that, the school you go to is going to open doors, is going to obviously be an impact for the rest of your life. So I applied to a few colleges, was lucky enough to be accepted at quite a few. I always wanted to, so I was born on March 17th, so St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
And so I always felt, although I'm not Irish, I always felt like I was. And so, then years ago, I saw a movie named Rudy, and so I wanted to go to Notre Dame, right? And, I applied to Notre Dame, applied to Fordham, applied to all these colleges, and quickly realized that, unfortunately, we just couldn't afford certain of these colleges. Fordham gave me an opportunity. They said, you can come here. You've been accepted, but I'd have to work from 9 to 5 and then go to school at nights for college to be free. My parents were like, your number one job is school. And then Iona came in and they made a good scholarship offer. And
move your hand up. Up, yeah.
Like that?
Yeah.
Sorry about that, guys. That's when I said, let me go visit Iona. I came to campus. I really, really loved it. And that was the deciding factor for me. And then obviously the roots of Irish that the college had, I think was just the icing on the cake.
That's great. So you were a business major when you attended here?
When I first attended here, I was undecided. Okay. So I had a focus on programming, so I went into computer science. And then I had a professor who said to me, Mr. Diaz, you are too outgoing and you like to talk a lot in class. I think you're going to be bored being a programmer. And so he pointed a role for me in information systems, which was kind of the connecting of IT and business. And so that's when I declared a major and went into that field.
Wow. So do you still have a relationship with this professor? Do you feel like he helped guide you into
He
where you are
did,
today?
he did. No, we don't, unfortunately. I mean, he's now long retired. But yeah, I always speak about him and how he was, a catalyst for that. And then I think it's important for you guys to understand that mentorship is extremely important. And mentorship can be in various ways. It's not just your teachers today. It could be someone within the field that you want to go to, that you can sit down and ask all these questions. But he was definitely a catalyst to kind of point me in that direction.
Yeah, and we have a lot of students. I've spoke with a lot of students, and they are undecided, or they're in a major and they like the classes, but they're not sure where it's really going to take them. So when you started taking the business courses here, what made you think like, oh, banking, finance, like what was it that kind of drew you to that industry?
Yeah. We say often in the banking industry that you don't choose banking, banking chooses you. And I think that's true for 80% of my colleagues today. So I'll share this, right? And I've learned over the years that I learn better through storytelling. So years ago, I heard this story about a farmer who planted seeds in his field. And now keep in mind, these seeds had the same water, same soil, same sun. And there were a portion of the fields that grew very quick. Another portion followed thereafter. But there was a portion of the field that just, it did not grow. And he was just baffled by the fact that, he was watering it, he was giving it as much love as the other portions of the field. But this field just didn't grow. And then several years later, it started to sprout and some plants started to come out. And then seasons went by and these plants were still growing, but not at the pace as the other fields. And as the years went by, storms happened. And the fields that grew fast at a quick pace, some of the trees were gone, some of the plants didn't exist anymore, others were bent. But the field that took its time was still standing, regardless of the season and of the storms. And so I share this story because I feel sometimes that we're rushed to make decisions about the careers that we need, the roles that we need, and sometimes just finding that foundation is pivotal to making sure that you go in the right field or in that right calling. So for me, banking wasn't a calling. Again, I majored in information systems. I quickly learned upon graduation that it's about who you know. So I applied everywhere. I mean, you name it, I was applying. There weren't the options that you have today. So back then, Indeed was just starting. So I was just applying, going and checking out newspaper articles, just to apply for all these roles in computer science, information systems. And finally, I was able to get a job at Bronx Community College in the Office of Continuing Professional Studies. At the time, they were still doing manual registering the students, and so I built through Microsoft Access, which a lot of folks don't use anymore, their database.
Right.
And again, I was 23, 24. I was, I thought the world was mine, and I wanted things now, and I demanded things now. And so when you go and work in some of these places, you're a contract worker. And so I didn't have the benefits that all my colleagues had. And so I went to my boss's office and I said, hey, you know what, if you don't give me a full-time job, I quit on the spot. She explained to me they couldn't, so guess what I did? I quit on the spot. 6 months later, I couldn't find a job. 7 months turned into a year, and I was trying. I finally landed at Barnes & Noble's. And there I was with a lot of kids that just had dropped out of school, or some were still going to school, and there I was with a major. And I think that was a process of humbling me. And then I met a financial advisor who wanted a book. And I just kind of advised him on what book he should be reading, fiction book. And so he was like, man, you're very outgoing. Have you ever thought of a banking career? So I said, no, never. He introduced me to someone. I was interviewing the very next week. Again, sometimes it's luck, guys, right? So it's about being outgoing, but it's about asking the right questions. And so I got hired, believe it or not, in the training class of the higher cohorts that we had. It was all of us were tellers. I was a teller for one day because the district manager showed up and was asking questions. And so when they asked me, where I was from, and all that. And I was like, hey, I'm a college graduate, here's where I'm from. She said to me, why would you pose for a teller? And so I said to her, I didn't study anything in the finance world. I don't know anything about banking. What better way to learn banking than starting from the ground up? And I think that's what a teller role will do for me. She really loved that answer. And then she invited me the next day to interview with her, but it didn't feel like an interview. It felt like a conversation. What I didn't know is they were interviewing me for a special program that led to the financial center manager role. So it was a 6-month program. You go through all the roles. But that was it. That was back in 2005, and that was the beginning of my banking career. So again, I say,
Yeah.
I didn't choose banking, banking chose me.
And you were with some other banks in the past, which was the one that you started with?
So that was Wachovia Bank. I loved that bank. I thought I was going to retire there. Unfortunately, we made some bad decisions. We bought World Savings, which was a mortgage-focused bank out of Long Island. And then 2009 happened, which was a big crisis for those of you business majors. You should read into that. And so there were these mortgage issues, and so our bank, Wachovia Bank, went belly under, and we got bought out by Wells Fargo.
Right. And so now you're with Citizens.
Yes.
Yes, and new at Citizens, right?
Yeah, so I'm 6 weeks into Citizens, but look, banking is anywhere, no matter where you go. The most important thing in banking is relationship building. But yeah, I'm with Citizens. I love the bank. It's a great bank, great culture. Reminds me a lot of Wachovia Bank. My two favorite colors are blue and green. I know it sounds silly. But the fact that it was green, I was like, it's destiny. I'm meant to be there. So, yeah.
Well, I talk to the students a lot about how networking is so important. But I want you to kind of tie that into your role in relationship management.
Yeah. If I could go back and tell my younger self, and look, everything you're learning in school is important. It really is. And oftentimes I tell folks, because I used to manage as well, and I used to tell anybody that would come into my team, you went to school to learn many things that you're going to put into work here. But mainly you're showing us that what we're about to teach you, you can pick up very quick. But the 3 things that I wish I could tell my younger self that I am happy to share with you all today is the power of networking. Network. The folks that all of you here, I ask you a question. Do you know the person across from you? Do you know the person in front of you? Getting to know each other is going to be valuable as you move on from college, because some of you will have the great opportunity to land in a job and others will probably not. And having that connection is going to be important to open doors. So I think networking opens doors. The other thing that I wish I would have learned is the power of building relationships. So networking is connecting and finding folks that you can say hello to, and then building relationships is following up with those folks, is checking in. And that's where I think my job comes in. So being a business relationship manager, it's not just about networking, but it's about building relationships. And lastly, the other thing that I wish I would have learned back then, or somebody would have told me, is the power of public speaking. No matter what role you go to, no matter what industry you do, you will always need to do a presentation, whether it's to 2 or 3 people or a group like this. And I think that's very important for us to learn, the power of public speaking, to be comfortable in our skins, to present whatever ideas we have, or to represent the companies that you work for. I think those 3 things were very important for me to have learned, that I just learned through the process of going through all these banks and having the roles that I've had. But I think, I would impart that wisdom on you guys, that it's important that you start developing the power of networking, the power of public speaking, and more importantly, the power of building relationship. I can't tell you how many jobs have come to me because of the networking aspect and the building relationship aspect. Maya Angelou once said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And that is very important, because that's what happens in business. Folks want to do business with people they can connect to, people they feel comfortable with.
Yeah, no, that's true, and yeah, that's great. I want them to be able to ask you a few questions, so start thinking of your questions. First, I'm gonna just ask you, what is a typical day for you in the workplace?
Yeah. Organization is key. So, my day starts very early at around 8:30. I look at my calendar. So, in the sales world, you always have to have appointments, right? So, having a robust pipeline is important. And so, again, networking, connecting, that's important to me. So I always look at my calendar and I see, what do I have this week? Ideally, I want to have 6 appointments with 3 people that I know and 3 prospects, people that I don't know, businesses that I don't know. And so usually the way that works is the folks that I do know and that I've helped in the past, I say to them, the best compliment you can give me is a referral. And so when they refer someone to me, I make it a point to meet with them. So my typical day is always in meetings, meeting prospects or engaging with my clients. And I love what I do because really, ultimately, it's about helping folks, but it's really about having connections and building relationships and having conversations. The most important thing that you learn in this world, in the business relationship management world, or the sales world, is the power of listening. Because oftentimes you'll see that we don't listen. If you ever have had the experience of going and buying a car with one of your parents, or if you already gone out on your own, watch how these guys, they operate. They're not listening to you. They want to sell a car. You're there and tell them, yeah, I'm looking for a blue car and I'm looking for this model and this trim. I hear you, but look, this is what I have for you. No, you're not listening to me. And I think that is lost often. And so I think the most successful business relationship managers in my industry are the ones that are able to listen and connect the dots and build those relationships.
That's great. All right, so questions. I know you had your hand up, so go ahead. You want to?
What was it like working with that? Let me rephrase that. What was it like working that made you become this part of yourself?
Oh, thank you. It's a combination of experience. I mean, I've been in banking for 21 years. I've always wanted to learn more. And so I read a lot, but I read a lot of books on leadership. And look, if you ever picked up a business book, they're boring. They are boring. So years ago, I found this book called Winnie the Pooh on Management. And if you guys know Winnie the Pooh, he's a fun guy, right? I'm a Tigger type of guy, but I still listen to Winnie the Pooh. And so he explained management and Winnie the Pooh style. And so I started realizing that those books were teaching me, but they were doing it again in storytelling. And so I've read books on leadership. And then it's just experience, right? It's what you do with what you have and how you learn. You're going to make mistakes, but it's how you learn from those mistakes that's going to get you there. And then don't ever forget that you don't know everything, and it's okay to say that. And I think, especially for those of you that end up getting in management, don't be afraid to hire smarter people than you. They're going to make you look good anyway. But the power of learning from them is going to be so amazing that you're just going to be a better people manager because of that.
Great. What about, speak to the entrepreneurs in the room. We have a lot of students who want to start their own businesses. And of course, the first questions are, how am I going to get this money to start my business? And, we discuss startup costs, but really when you meet someone for the first time and they say, I want to start a business and this is how much money I need, how can you help them?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I hear you guys, and we see this often in banking. Your ideas, first and foremost, it's very courageous to come up with an idea and then push forward with it. I wish I was like that. I'm not, which is why I came to work in the corporate world. So kudos to all those entrepreneurs. Know your story. Know what your product is, who it's going to serve. Know your industry competitors. Know your financials. Oftentimes, I speak to folks that are building a business, and they have this concept and they have this idea, but they can't tell me their projections. Like, why should I give you this money? Why should I lend to you? How are you going to pay me back? See, there is this misconception that folks think that, oh, well, if I can give you a collateral or a reason for you to give me this loan because I have, I own this building, or my business is going to be so successful that we're going to be able to pay it back. the bank's not in it for that. We just want to lend you the money, and we want to know how we're going to get it back. So knowing how your financials are going to square off is very important. We call that cash flow in the banking world. What type of cash flow are you going to generate that's going to pay back this loan? So, I share a story. A couple of years ago, I met a young lady who wanted to open up a coffee shop not too far from here. She had this awesome concept, coffee shop. It was going to be also opened for poem readings at night. She had all these other ideas. And the ideas were good, but she didn't have a business plan. So she didn't tell me how she was going to do that. How is she going to market to folks? How is she going to get people in? Why is her cafe any different than another cafe? How are you going to beat Starbucks? And then once she got that concept, she built that concept, but then we needed projections. Okay, so your business is not open yet. So how are you going to generate money? So she had this lavish amount of funds that were going to come in. But then when we look at the industry, the most successful cafes are not bringing that. So why is your coffee shop going to bring that? What is it that it's going to have that others won't have? So having realistic numbers as well. When you have all that set in stone and you can speak to it, then you're conveying not only confidence, but it's telling us, the bankers, that you know your business. And so we already know, wait a minute, we want to do business with you. We have something here because we have all the industry numbers. So we can compare what you're showing us with what the industry is telling us. So I think knowing your numbers, understanding your story, understanding who you're going to serve, and why this product or why your business is one that we should fund. I think that's important. And the other thing that I want you guys to know on this side is, we can partner with what we call the Small Business Administration, and they will help us give funding to you. And the reason why banks like that is because the SBA says, look, if you can fund a new business, we will cover 60% of any loss of the bank. So if we're lending, just practical math, $100,000 to you, and you don't pay it back, the SBA will cover us for $60,000 of that $100,000. So we're not at a full loss. So we'll look at that business at that point and possibly do a loan through the SBA because you're just starting up. It's what we call a startup business.
Right. So the banks want to see an actual business plan.
Yes.
They want to see the financial projections for 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, we want to see 3 to 5 years. We know, looking at no matter the industry, that if your business can't make it the first 2 years, it's probably not going to make it for the rest. So we want to see 3-4 year projections, ideally 5.
Mm-hmm.
We want to know who your accountant is. How did you come up with these numbers? Who are you working with? There are things that you can do that are free. SBA.gov will connect you with some folks that can help you make these projections and pull out all these numbers, so that when you go into a bank and present it, the story's right there. And at the end of the day, for us, it's, again, when you go into a bank, you need to understand, they want to know how they're going to get paid. How are we going to get the money back?
Right. No, exactly. Yes, go ahead.
I have 2 questions. First, how do you think storytelling plays a big part in projecting or saying business? And how do you think that your start in the South Bronx helped you create or build the person that you are today?
Thank you for the question. I think storytelling helps because oftentimes we get lost. I mean, if you ever looked at, I don't know about you guys, but math wasn't my strong suit. And just looking at a page with all these numbers really kind of just lost me, and I was disinterested. But when there was storytelling, it allowed me to understand and maybe even possibly connect with what's happening in the story. So storytelling, when you're speaking about your numbers, is you don't know who you're presenting to and how your story is going to connect to them. And so when you can speak to your numbers and what your vision is through storytelling, I think you're going to create a bigger impact. And growing up in the South Bronx, how it shaped me is I've seen what struggle looks like. I've seen what not getting up every day because you're comfortable looks like. And then I saw the other side of, hard work pays off and the opportunities that it presents. And so, you know that Jay-Z song where he said, "Mama, I made it." Like, I wake up every day feeling like that. You know what? I'm not a statistic. I'm not just a kid from the South Bronx. And my kids are now growing up in the mean streets of Larchmont because I worked hard to get them there so they don't have to grow up in the environment that I grew up in. And so I think that's helped me kind of be the person that I am today.
Thank you. Good question. Anybody else have a question?
When you went from like information systems to now banking, like what did you take from information systems and what was the challenges from information systems to banking?
Another great question. Information systems had a lot of business courses in it, so just the business acumen was important. What I think it's important, regardless of where you end up, I can tell you in the industries that I've navigated and the folks that I speak, a lot of folks out there, I don't want to throw statistics because I don't know the actual numbers, but I probably use the Pareto rule, or 80% to 20%. I'd say 80% of folks out there are not working in the industries that they went to school for. And so what I would tell you is the way it ties in is just how you were as a student. I think that plays a vital role in how you show up at work. So if you were, and look, I was that student. So I remember marketing class, I would go in the Hagen School of Business, which by the way did not look like the way it looks now. And we had like this nice little path that you could drive up to in front of the Hagen School of Business. It was like a nice little patio. I remember it because my then, well, she didn't know it then, but she was going to be my wife, would sit in front there and read a book. But what I would say is that the way it ties is the way you show up in school is how you're going to show up at work. And I used to sit in the back because I didn't want to be seen. I liked chatting with my friends. I liked going to parties. And that can translate to work. So how does it translate? Well, you show up late to meetings. Your reports are often all over the place because, you were networking very late the day before. So I think it's important that you learn good processes now, that you have good vision now, so that when you show up to, regardless of whatever job you land, you do it with the best of your ability. And so I think that's how it kind of correlated where I am today. But ultimately, I would say really a lot of it is going to be on the job experience. Oftentimes, guys, people want to know that you went to school because the way we see it, and I can tell you because I've hired folks too, and I've been in the rooms with HR, the connection between college and getting a job is ultimately really, are you teachable? Are you responsible? That's what we're looking at when we see that you have a college degree, right? Yes, if you're posting for a job because you're studying to be a psychologist and you want to open up, your own business, or you're going to a particular hospital, yeah, that's important, absolutely. But if you're going into the business world, we're just kind of seeing, hey, are you teachable? Can you work, with what we do? You're going to give us a hard time. So oftentimes, that's what we're looking at, whether you have a college degree. But it really, depending on the business world that you're going into, sometimes your degree won't prevent you from getting the job. It's how you show up to the interview.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yes, sir.
So, a lot of the times when I'm applying for jobs, I get told this saying that it's more about who you know and less about what you know. Would you believe that statement being true, false?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. So remember, one of the things that I shared that I wish I would have known back then is the power of networking. I think that can be true. Oftentimes, unfortunately, if you apply for the job and you're more qualified than, let's say, the person that was before or after you, but that person knows someone within the company, they're going to hire that person because of who they know, not always because of qualifications, right? So, I wouldn't hold that to be the number one true rule, but I would say it can happen often, and I've seen it happen to many folks, and I've also been part of the folks that have been lucky enough that have been hired because of someone I know. But yes, that's why network now. Get to know folks. Don't be afraid to have questions. Don't be afraid to just go across the room from someone and say, "Hey, look, I see that you're doing this. Show me how you're getting that done." And the power that it will unlock later on is going to be important. There are some folks that I graduated with that later on opened up their own business. One of them is still a good friend of mine. He has a photography business, but when he was starting up, he just needed somebody to give him an opportunity to take pictures. I was working at Wachovia at the time, and so he came to me and he's like, "I just want to be able to take pictures of something." So I spoke to a couple of my folks, and so whenever we had grand openings at branches, they hired him. He was a cheap hire. He was producing good pictures, and then that led for him to get pictures put on the New York Times, and then that led for him to kind of open up his own shop, and now he does wedding venues. But it's all because of a connection of, who can help you open the door. And then the rest is how you show up to that door once it's open.
Yeah, great answer. Question?
Did you have any mentors that kind of helped guide you from the transition from college to career?
I did. I mean, that's a great question. I've had a couple of mentors. One, and you can probably Google him. I think he's out in Miami now. His name's Frederick Lessort. So he had these businesses in New York City. He opened up a lot of restaurants, and so I met him one day when I was. So I used to go help my mom, clean these apartments because she would give me hard cash. Right, and I'm in college. I wanted that hard cash, and so but I would bump into these folks. And I would chat with them, and so I'd always have tons of questions. How did you get here? How did you come to this dream? So he and I would connect once a week. Years ago, I forget this gentleman's name. He came up with the idea with the doggy bags to pick up your dog's number 2, and I would sit as he kind of mentored me on things. I would sit and fold these bags because he was sending it to companies to present. So he was like, I'll teach you some of the stuff that I'm doing, but you got to work for me, and I'm not going to pay you, but this is what you're going to do. But you see, I never saw it like I'm not getting money. I saw it like I'm getting an education on how to approach certain companies to present my ideas. And then, I had life mentors, folks that I could go to and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Oftentimes we are told that it's not okay, especially for us men, that it's not okay to show weakness or, this moment of being afraid. And it's okay. And it's okay to say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing and I need your help. And so I think, find life mentors too. And don't be afraid to go to your parents. They can teach you a lot too. So I would say, and I would encourage you, find mentors. Some of the teachers here could be your mentors. But definitely find mentors that you can go to and kind of just bounce ideas from.
Yes, I'll give Heinz a plug that we have an excellent mentoring program. But before I ask if there's any other questions, can you share a story, or I'm sure you could probably think more than one, but of a business that you helped fund through banking that is like really successful now? It could be something local, or anybody that comes to mind, a good success
absolutely.
Story.
Absolutely. I mean, there are a few. There is one business out in the city. Again, this is before Dogtopia here. They had this idea of having this pet place where these dogs can come for a day in spa or a dog baby daycare. And so they had this plan. And look, they happen to, land on my desk, and I happen to be a dog person. And I was like, what? This is actually a good idea. I like this. So I met with the individual. We started having conversations. She had projections. I connected her with a partner of mine that works at the SBA at the time. And so he helped kind of really bring these projections to fruition. And, her business started to grow. She sold it about 7-8 years ago to a Petco.
Oh, wow.
And so they became their grooming services as well. Actually more than that. It's actually more than 7 years ago. But you know, it was cool to see the progression of her story and how I was a bit of a part of that story in helping her kind of push through her story at my end in the bank that I was working with, because that's the other thing too, right? So once you apply to a loan with any bank, having that relationship and connecting with your banker is important, because you're not going to be present at the loan committee or speak with the underwriters to tell your story. So you want to be able to connect with that banker so that that banker can tell your story so that they can approve your loan. So I think that's very important for you to also kind of understand. It's a two-way street. Don't look at it from an aspect of, you know, this is the banker that's going to, you know, get me the loan, or if they're not getting you the loan, or if they're giving you feedback, don't get upset at them. They're just trying to make sure that the next time around you're successful, that you can get this loan approved. But anyway, I go back always and see that growth of that individual and how she's you know, sold her business, and it was all because we just gave her a loan for, you know, for a basic startup.
That's great. No, that's great. And I did forget to ask you too. Maybe somebody was thinking this. Credit. How do banks look at credit, and especially for, you know, a younger individual that may want to start a business? How can they improve?
Yeah.
You know.
So it's a combination of different things, right? So we look at the industry, if especially on the business side. So business and personal are two different things, right? So when you're applying for a credit card, you're applying for a personal loan or a mortgage, your personal credit is looked at. On the business world, we will look at your credit, but not right away. The first and most important thing is your business. Think of your business as an entity, as another individual, if you will. And so that's where we will focus on, right? So what is your business telling us? What industry is your business in? And then we do have business scores in the industry that we will look at. And so if your business, just like you, has had a history of a credit card or loan, it will have a score out there that the banks will look at. And then how your credit score will come into play is, you know, you're the owner of the business, right? So you're responsible for said business. So how you manage your personal financials is going to also dictate how most likely you're going to manage this business. So that's when we'll pull also credit. And if you have strong credit, then again, it's adding to a successful story that this is going to look good. Your business is in the right industry. It has a positive score. It's owned and being managed by an individual who also has good strengths on their personal financials. So that's how it's all tied.
Yeah.
But it's not the beginning of it all. And we've had folks that don't have the best credit score, they have a great business, a successful business, and so we'll still provide a loan, because ultimately what's paying us back is the business that's generating income. And that's how, and usually you'll see that in a lot of folks that invest in properties. So you have a lot of folks that do investment properties, because they're doing a lot of investment properties. Sometimes, you know, they overstretch themselves on the personal side to start funding to buy these properties. That's, you know, their personal credit at first gets hit, but some of these properties are generating so much income for them that we're able to lend on that property itself and not look at their personals right away.
Okay, all right, great. All right, we might have time for one more question before we wrap up. I know some of you have another class to go to. Anybody else have a question? No questions. All right, well, maybe Juan can hang out a few minutes in case anybody wants to speak with him. But I want to thank you so much for being with us here today. We appreciate your time. And thank you, everybody. Can we give one round of applause?
Thanks, everyone.